Hello, this is Grant Hughes of Grant Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Please hit that like button, share, and subscribe. Recently, there's been some hearings in the Delphi case, and there's an individual named Dawn Perlmutter. I'm not really sure how to say that last name, but she's apparently some sort of like ritualistic killing expert that's consulted with police departments, maybe the FBI, etc. And she's now been hired by the defense team to sell the narrative that there was Odinism or ritualistic killings in the Delphi murder case, and therefore it couldn't have been Richard Allen because he wasn't in an Odinistic cult. For those of you not aware, this is the case of Abby and Libby, and they were both murdered back on February 13th, 2017 on the Monon High Bridge trails. They had been dropped off right here, walked down, and at the time they just basically disappeared and people were looking for them. And then the following morning, after crossing this bridge here, they were actually found dead underneath some trees over here about 50 feet from the water. And this is where the crime scene was. They weren't found the first night, likely because people didn't think they were on the other side of the river, because why would they cross? So they were looking all around over in these areas here. Crime scene photos have been leaked, but before they were even leaked, the defense team put out what we refer to as the Odin document, which was the supplemental documents for the Frank's hearing memorandum. It's actually like a Frank's hearing memorandum that they put out, and it's over 100 pages long, and it was about why the search warrant wasn't valid, because the judge didn't have specific information that would have changed their mind and wouldn't have allowed the search warrant. So they want all of the information that was received from the search warrant to be thrown out. And that's just a classic technique. But in that document, they brought up this crazy notion of Odinism, and there was this other cult, and Richard Allen's just some unlucky guy, struck by circumstances, just totally unlucky. Right. Even though he's confessed 61 times. But anyways, in these hearings recently, they had a guest named Dawn Perlmutter, and she testified and really seemed to back up and support what the defense is saying. So obviously if you hire her, that's what her opinion is going to be. But she sort of telegraphed her belief system because she was on court TV back in September when I was there. So when I was actually at Delphi for that documentary, I remember I was on one of the episodes of Court TV at the time, and later in that show, this expert came on and talked. So I have that for you. But before we do that, let's go take a look at what this article says by Wayne.com. It says right here, the rest of the morning focus on the testimony from an expert in Odinism and ritualistic killings. The defense is trying to link the killings of the girls to Odinism and third-party suspects. Dawn Perlmutter, an expert on ritualistic symbols and killings, took the stand on day 3 of the trial. She testified there were 7 indicators of a ritualistic killing, including the place of the killing was outdoors. Aren't a lot of killings outdoors? February 14th is a sunup to sundown Odinistic sacrificial holiday. So does that mean you take a holiday from sacrificial offerings, or I don't really understand what that even means. But the thing is, the murders happened on February 13th. February 14th has nothing to do with it. That's the day they were found. Now you might say it was sundown, so that'd be later in the evening. But the thing is there were people searching all around, and he had already left before the sun was down. The killer had left the scene before the sun was down, so that was on the 13th. So I'm not really sure what the 14th has to do with anything. The symbolism of the sticks and body positions were consistent with Odinistic runes. And the images that were shown on court TV at the time, they were just sort of somebody drawing the images, and they don't look like that at all in the actual photos that I've seen. And body positioning, okay, both their bodies are on the ground, and there are branches over them, sure. And that says atypical blood pattern. So, I mean, a lot of crime scenes have atypical blood pattern in them. This is one that, we don't know how it went at the crime scene. He likely used the gun to force them down the hill by the bridge. So if you're not familiar with it, on this end of the bridge, he was coming after them quick, and he caught up to him on this side of the bridge, and they took Libby took a video of the killer coming at them, and then he comes by and says, "Hey," and Libby says, "Hey," and then he says, "Down the hill." So basically he said, "Guys," and she said, "Hey," Libby did. And he had them go down the hill, and by gun, and then he forced them across the creek over here, and he killed them. Now, why he killed them, what his whole motive and plan was, we don't know. But Richard Allen, based on the probable cause document and all the information that's out there, absolutely is the person who is captured on Libby's phone, therefore is the person who took them across the creek and is, at the very least, one of the killers or part of whoever killed these girls. I mean, I can't tell you 100% that he's the only one, but I truly believe he's a single killer in this case. I can't peer back in time and see. But Richard Allen, without a doubt, is part of the murders of Abby and Libby, and I think incredibly likely that he's the one who did it all by himself, controlling the girls with his gun. All right, so that's what it said in the article. So now let's take a listen to what she said on court TV.
Well, I just have to emphasize that I did not observe any of the photos. I only have the information that I read in the descriptions.
Right. So all she had was the information she read in the description. So she hasn't seen the photos. She hasn't looked into anything. And yet here she's saying that, oh, yes, it's 100% a ritualistic killing.
I can tell you from what I've read, this is a classic ritual murder. I've worked on dozens of these types of homicide cases. Ritual homicide involves acts that go beyond the actions necessary to conduct the crime or elude the police. This is not a counter-forensic measure. You don't do all of that just to hide the body. It has all of the elements. It has symbols at the scene. What you're not
So they're saying symbols at the scene. But unfortunately, for her, this isn't what the scene looks like. But apparently she is one of their witnesses, so now she has seen the images and she's still sticking with it. But don't you think it's like somebody that has confirmation bias, that she already said this was ritualistic killing before without seeing anything? And of course now she's going to want to confirm that bias. These images right here are ridiculous. This isn't what it looked like whatsoever. There wasn't these little horns sticking out here. Totally garbage, okay?
Taking into account when they're looking at the shapes of these branches. And by the way, ritualistic crimes are typically outdoor crime scenes because they're nature-based ideologies. But when you're looking at the symbols, you need to account for the shape of the body underneath it when you're interpreting it. You're not just looking at the sticks. It can be the entire thing, and it has meaning to whoever did it.
All right. So for no matter what, for her, if somebody suggests to her, hey, I think this is ritualistic killing, she's going to look at it in a way that supports that, okay? Because she believes in this kind of thing. Even though there's really no documentation of ritualistic killings of people that I've found regarding, in the Odinistic cult, okay? Not that you've seen, though, Gray. See, they hide it from everybody.
I really do not think it's random. The other thing is obviously the cause of death is significant. In ritualistic crimes, you do not get gunshots. They're always typically knife wounds, and there's always things that are done with the blood, and in this case, obviously a secondary scene, but blood, whether it's blood spatter or what was on the tree.
So right now she's mentioning the tree. Okay, so let's take a look at what she's talking about. People claim that that's an F. Here's the original image right here. Now, when you look at that, you might go, oh, it's an F, it's an F. And the reason we think it's an F is because there's a sort of a straight line there and a straight line there, and then there's something over here. However, the portion that you see right here is just like any other portion of the tree, but because it's a little bit darker, we go, oh yeah, continuation of a line there, making an F, but it's just not reality. See, these are where the spots are. The experts apparently think this is a hand that hit the tree and then kind of slid down and drew that. So you have this portion and this portion, but you have a partial blood spot there, here, all over the place on the tree in those locations. Okay, so when they say symbolisms on trees, anybody can claim anything by looking at anything. I think this looks like a guy smoking a cigarette. All right, let's go back with this.
It seems that this was not random at all. And body positioning is very significant. And as I said, it will have some meaning to the person who did it. In terms of Odinism, which I'm very familiar with, it would be consistent with racist Odinism, which is very popular, has been popular among neo-Nazi skinheads and prison.
Consistent with racist Odinism? What? See, it's almost like she read what was in the documents and then kind of wanted to make it associated with that. How is this consistent with racist Odinism when both the victims are Caucasian? This doesn't make any sense at all.
Gang since the late 90s. In fact, there's many groups right now that are taking it to the next level. We have a blood tribe leader who has runes tattooed on his face that translate to son of Wotan, which is one of the also known as Odinism.
Wow, he has son of Wotan on there? Holy crap, everybody! That must mean that this is a ritualistic killing. Whoa!
Well, you'd have to know what type of ritual. Again, if it's not somebody connected to one of these organized ideologies, it could be something they're just inventing in their mind. But it could also be, you don't know if it's an initiation, if it's sacrificial. There's a lot of different types of rituals that are done.
Well, let me lay this out. Let me lay this out, though, Dawn, because here's what the defense is saying. The defense is saying one of these girls has a mom who would date interracially. So that was the motivation behind all of this. This is part of their theory. And it's this group that is, practicing Odinism. And this is why they attacked these particular girls. That's part of what they're laying out there as potentially what happened here. Does it make it less plausible that there haven't been other attacks in the area? Like a group, would they just kind of go after one particular victim and one off and that's it? We don't see bodies all over the place?
No, that it's quite possible and plausible. There are groups like this that not only ritually murder, they ritually rape women. They're active. They could be doing it in other places. I guess what I'm trying to say is this does happen, as bizarre as it sounds. There are ritual murders, and a lot of these racist Odinists are growing. They are recruiting, and they're part of this like warrior tribal. They identify.
Yeah, but I mean, where are other samples of murders happening just like this with branches and symbols placed on them? Where are other examples of this?
With that ideology. So it's very plausible, and I think again, this is without seeing any of the not seeing other evidence.
Right. So you haven't seen any of the evidence at all, and yet you're absolutely certain that this is an Odinistic, ritualistic killing, and you're even looking at images here that do not represent what the branches actually look like on either of the girls. They don't look like that at all.
It is plausible to me.
Okay, fair enough. Our guests are great. They're staying with us. When we come back, we're going to ask this question. Was this a one-man job? Could one person have done all of this?
I think it could be either way. I think it could have been one person that they could intimidate the girls, and especially if they had planned it ahead of time, if they, whether they stumbled upon them or, were just had this in mind, fantasized about it for a long time, it could be one person or it could be more than one.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't really answer it. Yeah, it could be one person or more than one. Well, yeah, but he wanted you to say which one it was. But the thing is sure, she was right. I think it's one person, so that definitely is possible with a gun, etc., to coerce. And as a matter of fact, I think that is what happened, So saying, I just said was it's possible. I think it's more than possible. I think that's likely and is what happened. And eventually the evidence based on a tip came back, and it came back to Richard Allen. If you go through the probable cause like we've done probably 5 or 6 times live on the show multiple times, you'll be able to see how obvious it is. But conspiracies and crazy side stories are always more entertaining and interesting for people to jump on. So that's what people like to do. Okay? So after Don Perlmutter testified, if we continue on in this article, it says other indicators included that the cause of death, according to Perlmutter, was the girls' throats were slit with a sharp object. Perlmutter also said that the murder weapon, a ceremonial knife, was a part of the case, but the official weapon is not known in the case. How in the hell would she know that? And by the way, Richard Allen admitted to using a box cutter. I don't know of any ceremonial box cutters out there. That would be really helpful in this case if we can find one of those ceremonial box cutters. She said, in my opinion, this was a textbook ritual murder. Interestingly, she said that on Court TV. It has all the elements listed there. Perlmutter testified. Isn't that interesting? She said exactly the same thing on Court TV. Perlmutter also testified that she was positive that the sticks were placed in a ritualistic manner and not with the intention of covering up or hiding the body. When asked by the prosecution if the defendant made a statement that the branches were there and he tried to cover the bodies with them, would that change your mind? Perlmutter said no. Okay, so the defendant himself, in a confession, says that he just covered the body with branches. She doesn't agree with the actual killer. Okay. Prosecutor McClellan, I think it's saying, it does say McClure here, noted that Perlmutter was paid to testify and has no official blood spatter training. The prosecutor also pointed out that Perlmutter went on Court TV and said that the killing was a ritual killing last November. But she testified today she did not see any evidence or any crime scene photos until this April. I thought that was in September, but it was an episode of me. I was on Court TV earlier in the episode, so maybe that was, I've been on there a couple different times, but I actually remember it being in September because that's when I went to Delphi, and that's when this information came out about the Odin document. I was on my drive there when it came out. If you guys remember me live streaming while in the passenger seat. I don't want people getting out there going, oh, while you were driving, you were live streaming? How did you read it? That's because I was in the passenger seat. But she testified today she did not see any evidence or any crime scene photos until this April. The prosecutor pointed out she made the determination that Libby and Abby were ritualistically killed on court TV before seeing evidence in the case. I think that's a great point. The judge is going to be able to look at this and say, this person's biased, and look how she determined it was ritualistic without even seeing any of the crime scene evidence and photographic information. There you have it, everybody. That is the expert that testified in court recently, and the judge is currently reviewing the testimony from those hearings and making many crucial decisions. The judge has already ruled on the protection order and moved him to a jail that is a lot closer and convenient for everyone on his side. And the judge is also, probably the key thing that she's ruling on is whether or not the defense will be allowed to introduce third-party Odinistic, people of interest or suspects that they think did it, even though they've all been ruled out by law enforcement. And if the judge rules against that, then I don't know what case the defense even has for a trial. And I think at that point, the defense might really consider a plea deal. Or, maybe even an Alford plea at that point, because he wouldn't want to admit guilt just in case some of their rulings and so forth that they're going to try to go for later gets him a new trial. He won't have pled guilty. He'll just say, well, I believe that you have enough evidence to convict me, but I'm not admitting guilt. All right? So that is it, everybody. I hope you found that interesting. I hope they don't allow them to use the Odinistic crap, because there's too many gullible suckers in society who actually believe that kind of stuff. All right? So thank you all very much for watching. I appreciate you taking the time. And as I always say, until next time, be safe out there. Oh, and hit that like button.